Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you're enjoying the conference so far. Something that has changed too in the last 10 years, I need glasses now, so there you go. Il est merveilleux de voir aussi grand nombre de participants aujourd'hui. J'espère que vous appréciez ces conférences. I hope you're enjoying the conference so far. And I wanted to, as we go into the afternoon, I wanted to give you a bit of an overview where the council is going, where it's been a little bit, but more where we are, what we have accomplished as a group of very committed individuals. I mean, it's not about the council per se as the CaGBC, it's more about you and all the good work you have done over the last 10 years to revolutionize the built environment in Canada, and also increasingly make an impact globally of people that are I'm just waiting for my presentation coming up here, for people that are working in the national field. I should mention that Kevin also was the chair of the World Green Building Council, and he was the chair of the US Green Building Council, and he's the founder of the Canada Green Building Council. So you can see that some of these organizations obviously now have a very global impact. And I had the pleasure about 2 months ago to go to Rome as part of a invitation to talk about green building, advances in green building in Canada. And I went to one of my favorite buildings, which is the Pantheon, which is 2,000 years old. It was built by Agrippa, who was a very famous general in the Roman army. That's at least how I remember it from my Latin in school. But one of the significant things is actually a green building. It has the dome is made with porcelain cement, and they used shells to what we would call today fly ash concrete. So this is a very durable building. It obviously stood there for 2,000 years, and it might last another 2,000 years. But as I was going to that building, I was thinking about what the Romans actually trying to accomplish. And you know that Rome is called the Eternal City, and the Romans really wanted to basically create a new culture that they occupied most of Europe, and they went up into Germany and into England. You can still see their presence there today. So they had a vision of what they wanted their cities to look like, and their buildings should last forever, and the glory of their culture should last forever. So I thought, you know what can we as the green building movement actually learn from that? And I think that there's a lot of things that we actually have in common, because the Romans obviously create a legacy in Europe, and that includes how these cities still use infrastructure that the Romans built, including water infrastructure, sewer infrastructure. It has a long life. And the decisions now that we make as people move into cities, that investing in that infrastructure, it's really important that we get it right. Obviously, the Romans didn't have an environmental bone in the body. They kind of deforested half of Europe. But they had a purpose. And so when I think about the Romans in terms of the legacy and the legacy that we have created over the last 10 years, I think there's a lot in common with the green building movement as it is today. So our desire is, they were building huge cities. Our desire is to reshape buildings and homes and communities. I think it's about the built environment, but we heard earlier this morning from Ken Greenberg, and there was another session at Sydney 2020. It's more than buildings, it's transportation, it's infrastructure, it's naturalization of cities, it's urban agriculture. So it's really reshaping the way that buildings function and also enhance the quality of life for all Canadians. It's about innovation. So over the last 10 years, this industry, us, has introduced a lot of new practices, products, and technologies into the marketplace. There's a real innovation happening. 2 weeks ago, we certified the Manitoba Hydro building to a LEED Platinum level. It's the highest rated office building of this size now in Canada, and it's one of the leading buildings now in North America. Totally naturally ventilated building, fantastic fresh air. Every 15 minutes, the air is exchanged in that building. And it has a tremendous performance at around 80 kilowatt hours per square meter per year over the last 2 years in Winnipeg, which has a huge temperature differential. So LEED does produce and help produce these types of buildings. We challenge traditional approaches. We always have, and I would think that we always will, because I think we need to continuously drive forward in what we're trying to accomplish. As Kevin said, net zero, that's the next goal, and then regenerative, let's get to net zero first, but it's that striving that we need to do things differently. This building obviously is one of a living building challenge building in Vancouver, the Van Dusen Visitor Center that's targeting living building status. Obviously challenges everything, how we think about buildings, the way it looks. Great parallel, the Romans were doing the same thing. They did a lot of innovation in how they built buildings, and we were challenging approaches before. I guess they were huge innovators. But also we want to create places that matter to people. It's great to have the greenest green building and the most sustainable community where people don't enjoy living there. It fails. And I think it's very important to keep that in mind. At the end of the day, it's about people and the quality of life that we hope to improve through green building and sustainable community development. So when you look at those, like I thought about Toronto, and I thought where I would like to go in Toronto. And I said there's Kensington Market. I love Kensington Market, but this is a neighborhood that has kind of organically grown as a place where people want to be and just to hang out because it's diverse, it's interesting, and then you go to the Distillery District, which was empty, now it's been revitalized, and now the people are going there. So there's something about it that how can we revitalize part of our city so people want to be there? And obviously the Romans had a great city life. They had these city-states where people had a lot of pride, and I think we need to do the same. We cannot let our cities or parts of them become less interesting than others. But then what the Romans didn't have is they didn't really care much about the environment. They probably didn't understand it, but we do. And reducing environmental impact is obviously huge for us. If you look at the statistics in terms of its greenhouse gas emissions, if it's waste or water use, these are going to be issues that are going to increasingly demand our attention. And regardless of if government pays attention to it or not, I think luckily many cities and many provinces in this country put a lot of emphasis on greenhouse gas emissions and better environmental management. I think this industry and us, we have a really important contribution to make, just because the built environment has just a tremendous environmental impact in the building that's going on now globally. It doesn't matter if they built, it's not being built here. Building major cities in China will have an environmental impact in terms of air quality, in terms of greenhouse gas emissions, and so on. And just the opportunities, this is a number from a report that the National Roundtable has produced, which is, as you probably heard, will be discontinued. They did fantastic reports on this type of work, and it was on a commercial, just on the commercial office sector, what the opportunities were to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. And you can see the annual energy costs in that sector alone at that time, and the report is about 2 years old now, was $17.6 billion in energy costs. That's a tremendous opportunity to save, reduce greenhouse gas emissions, which are estimated in a report at 65 million tons, and at the same time save a huge amount of money. So this is a real opportunity that we increasingly need to focus on. So these are kind of in a way, kind of where we coming from, what we, perhaps our legacy now, over the first 10 years, we have made a big difference. I want to talk a little bit more about our accomplishments. So it's 10 years, and this was actually, it was in 2003 where we signed our agreement with CaGBC. And there's our former chair, Ian Jarvis, and then there's, what's his name again? Tim Hartsfeld, yeah, the name just says Jim Hartsfeld with Interface, a very fancy pen, as you can see, with a feather. It was a very important event, but that's launched it all in Canada. So we have obviously moved on from that to a great deal. And we do, just want to go over all the things that you do that you don't necessarily see. We, as you know, we do LEED certification. It's very visible in terms of buildings, but there are many, many other things that we have done over the last 10 years that have made a real difference. One is we do advocacy with government and with industry. There's no provincial government or territorial government now in Canada that does not have a green building policy. All the major cities have green building policies. This is a major driver in terms of our industry and the support that we get from government, federal government. Public Works, Real Property Department was one of the first government bodies in this country that adopted LEED Gold policy. This is very important policy decisions that continue to drive green buildings in this country. This was at Canada House at Greenbuild, where we actually were invited by the ambassador to Canada from the US, Jacobson, to hold a roundtable on green building cooperation across the border. I guess we're definitely moving up in the world. But then there's all the high-performance buildings. LEED, and there was some criticism 2-3 years ago that it wouldn't produce buildings that are high-performing. Well, it does. Not all of them, because they obviously need to be all properly operated. But this is the Earth Ranger Center out at by the TRCA. This is one of the highest performing buildings in Canada. They certified it to LEED Gold on an NC, and now they're pursuing LEED Platinum certification. And their energy performance is about the 60th percentile. You can see it here. It's a little bit small. You really see it better on the screen than I can see it. But these buildings in the box, these are the top performing buildings in Canada right now. On the very left is the Manitoba Hydro building at about 88 kilowatt hours. On the very right are a couple of buildings that are currently out at UBC. One completed, the Center for Interactive Research, and then the Student Union building with targets in the 50th percentile, 55, 57 kilowatt hours per square meter per year, and also seeking LEED certification. So we're definitely making progress, and we now, after those 600 buildings somewhat that we certified, we actually do see now the performance data coming out. And this is a very important time for us to make sure that we shift our attention in this performance verification reporting mode. And we should really, the data that we have, we should really share freely, because I think only if it's shared freely, I think we're making progress. But there's the next generation buildings. You see that in the convention center that was constructed in Vancouver, a LEED Platinum building, very, very innovative with cooling, using the ocean for cooling the building, largest green roof second largest green roof in North America, largest one in Canada. These buildings are now increasingly being constructed as a matter of fact. Obviously, this one was an exception at the time, but I think we see that green building has mainstreamed, and we see more of those buildings being produced. Canada also has global leadership. In the Olympics in 2010, all the buildings were certified to LEED. That was the first time that ever happened. And we have global leadership. We have some of the greenest and most advanced buildings and communities in the world. And I think there's a real opportunity for us to start marketing that. I think we've been too shy and not well organized to actually be doing that. But over the last 2 years, we've been working with the Department of Foreign Affairs and International Trade to do just that, to identify what our capabilities are in Canada and promoting them in Europe and in Latin America and other parts in the world, either to the World Green Building Council, but to other means as well. This is the skating oval. Was used for the Winter Olympics in Richmond. It's a wonderful wood structure that has obviously received a lot of attention in terms of design. And that's me there signing the agreement with DFATE a couple of years ago to collaborate, which is a really quite a great opportunity for the council and our members. But what LEED also has done, it has introduced rigor and innovation into the marketplace. And I wanted to, most of you probably have used LEED at some point. It has done that. It's continued to drive forward. We all know it's not perfect, but it has done that. And I think where we've been very good at is that we actually one of the few countries, we're the only country in the world actually that has taken LEED and adapted it to our conditions and to our culture. And I think that's something very important to keep in mind, that building rating systems, if it's LEED or BREEAM or Green Star, I think they need to be locally relevant. And our industry can be really proud of it. All those that have contributed to making that happen, that was a very important accomplishment. And of course, you heard that a couple of years ago we ran into difficulties because the demand for LEED and certification has really increased tremendously. So we have made great strides in the last 18 months to streamline LEED certification in Canada, to get it closer to a 6-month certification. And we have done a number of things to bring LEED certification back on track in a timely fashion. So the backlog is gone that we used to have. And you will see quarter-to-quarter improvements in terms of how quickly it goes to certify LEED projects. But what we also were able to over the last 10 years is we proved that green buildings have a return on investment. And one thing that miraculously, maybe it's not as miraculous, but it happened is that the business and the commercial office sector has really picked up on that green building and LEED certification is good for their sector. So you see many buildings, large office properties, currently being retrofitted for LEED for existing buildings. So that is a real rating system that's really taken off, particularly in the last 2 years. If you look at, this is just a registration and certification by rating system. The very left is LEED for new construction. This is by square foot. So you can see the middle column is LEED AB. The left column has grown over the last 8 years. The middle column has grown over the last 2 years. So there's a tremendous interest and a tremendous growth in looking at commercial office property driven by business interest, by sustainability, by pension funds' interest in getting new and existing office properties as sustainable as possible, because it provides market returns in terms of tenant attraction and tenant retention. We educate a lot of professionals. Estimates is about 20,000, over 20,000 professionals have gone through our education courses, and over 9,000 LEED APs in Canada. So these are the ones that we accredited. There's probably the estimate is around 12,000 if you include the ones that have been done through the US Green Building Council. So we really have trained and added to the skills of a lot of people that are important to this industry. And you can see it in the reports that are coming out now. There's a lot of reports being currently prepared on the green economy. And this is a report that was done by the Globe Foundation. It's actually about 4 years old now. That's the only one that's been done since. You know, it's a long time. But you can see when you look at the blue segments, actually green building in terms of employment, where at the time there were 21,000 people directly employed in the green building sector, and they contributed $1.5 billion to the GDP in British Columbia. These are big numbers. And I would expect when these new reports are coming out, now they're being prepared, that I think we'll see probably an improvement in that area. And performance matters. I think I mentioned that before, how buildings perform, how we measure, how we share that data, I think we'll have to take more of a center stage. Rating systems are good in terms of holistic building design, but I think we need to also be able to measure to see, are we making progress, but also provide feedback to designers and practitioners on what works and what doesn't. We have piloted our Green Up program over the last 3 years, and actually today at this conference today and tomorrow, we are launching it for the industry. You can go to our booth to get a demonstration how it works, to get the benchmarking services. Essentially, the goal is to create a national database that's based on actual performance of buildings. I think this is critically important because we don't have it in Canada. And so I invite you all to take a great interest in this, either through Green Up or through other benchmarking tools that are in the marketplace, to continue to build data on actual building performance. But our stakeholders are key to our success, so it's you, it's not us. It's you actually have done the work. And we are very blessed to have so many professionals that are helping us to achieve our goals, either in terms of advocacy as ambassadors or on the tags, on the technical advisory groups, helping us to refine rating systems, or in the latest example, helping us develop Green Up, so it's a good fit for the market. And these are our partners. These are people and organizations, many organizations and people in those organizations that we work with. And it stretches everything from our original partners, which is the US Green Building Council, to organizations like RealPAC and the Department of Foreign Affairs. These are very important to us in working to our mission and towards our goals. But I think when you think about the conference theme and the speaker this morning, scale matters. And bring about change that we're all seeking on a building-by-building basis is probably unrealistic. So I think we need to think broader, and we need to think about that living building challenge buildings, net zero buildings is obviously something that we will continue to support very strongly. But I think we also need to look at buildings and bring about smaller changes in buildings, particularly in existing buildings. I think we need to look at that. And I know here in Toronto there's an initiative called Race to Reduce that's been quite successful on a commercial office side. But this needs to be national. There needs to be a national effort to really look at existing buildings and reduce energy, water consumption, as well as solid waste generation. So talk a little bit about what's important in the future, and really the important thing in the future is the environmental footprint of the built environment. I think it has the biggest impact of any industry in the world. And this impact is most felt in cities, and cities are going to grow. Canada has actually one of the highest urbanized societies on the planet. 80% of us live actually in cities. And this, over the next 20 years, are going to grow to 90. If you go to places like China, over the next 20 years, 400 million people are going to move into cities, the biggest migration of people in the history of the planet. And as our mayor in Vancouver says, he said, every 5 minutes, another 100,000 people on this planet move into cities. So that's where we have to pay our attention, that the way the cities are going to grow, there is investment in cities right now globally. There's investments in cities in Canada because they have to accommodate the growth. And like I said at the beginning, when you look at the Romans again, what they built is still being used today. And I think maybe some of the things that we build over the next 20 years as we accommodate population growth will still be in use in hundreds, maybe thousands of years, and we better get it right. Because the footprint, I think if we got it right, I think the results might be less pleasant. Because we look at cities, and I use the city of Vancouver as an example because they were the first ones to kind of define this, is 56% of their greenhouse gas emission come from buildings. Not from transportation, not from manufacturing, not from solid waste, it's buildings. So that's where they're focusing their efforts in terms of the policy and the Greenest City Initiative. And the focus needs to be in existing building. This is from the World Economic Forum, a report that they produced that, not surprising numbers, 50% of today's building stock will still be in use in 2050. And available energy savings, readily available energy savings are between 20 and 40%. And I think what we found in Green Up and in using LEED E-Bomb, we found that to be true. And these savings are available at a very attractive return on investment. But we also want every building to be greener. When we were created 10 years ago, the focus was on LEED because that's what's around. That was the only tool that was available, and it redefined green buildings. But it's really clear when you see our programs now in terms of LEED, we're supporting the Living Building Challenge, we're supporting the Passive House Standard. It will be included in the LEED for Homes standard as an alternative energy rating. We're getting more into the community side, and we just issued our Sustainable Communities Toolkit. Our goal is really every building greener. This is going to be our new brand. This is where when you think about the council, you think about, we want really high-performing buildings, the exceptional examples, but we also want buildings that maybe just improve 10% every year. That is a good scale that I think we need to look at to bring about the bigger change. And this is a rendering of the Pan Am Village for the Pan Am Games that we hosted here. 5 years ago, these would have been all just run-of-the-mill buildings. Not so anymore. I think there are plans to make this a community that that has a reduced environmental impact at a very high level. So this is the change that we're seeing that is happening as we speak. But like I said, small changes for a larger number of buildings. For us, for the council, that's where Green Up is coming in. And that's where we like you to really encourage and to check out. This is a council-built program. This is our own program that we continue to we're going to deliver into the Canadian marketplace now, and we continue to develop to do a good job in creating this actual performance data and helping building owners make improvements to their buildings over time. The innovation in new buildings, like I said, Living Building Challenge, Passive House, these are all things that we are working together with the Canadian Passive House Institute, with the International Living Buildings Institute out of Seattle, and it's starting to produce some buildings. There's the Sears building out at UBC. There are a number of buildings, 2 buildings up in Sudbury. There's one in Simon Fraser University, a daycare. So these buildings are coming into the marketplace now. Obviously, they have a very high level experimentation, but it's very much needed to see what's doable. Promoting Canadian capabilities abroad. We continue to work with DFATE on doing that. We did it at Canada House last year as part of Green Build. We had like 600 business-to-business meetings between Canadian business and other people, businesses from other countries in 2 days. We had 275 businesses there that came through Canada House, 2,500 people in total to showcase what Canada can do. We're launching a Canada Builds Green directory that's available for free to our members that you can access on our website next week, and you can start listing your service, your product, your technology. And we're moving from buildings to neighborhoods to cities. I think we need to pay more attention to neighborhoods. And I'm not just talking about LEED for neighborhood development, which is now in Canada, but we need to look at it, how can existing neighborhoods be densified, either in a suburban or in an urban context, but also, pulling people back into the central city as well in terms of transportation and other aspects of it. So the scaling up of our effort, I think, is very important. And I think the many cities in Canada, Winnipeg, Halifax, they're really looking to bring people back downtown. And as a part of that kind of reinvigoration of downtown areas, to rebuild infrastructure, to rebuild buildings, and that can happen on a larger scale as we bring in more density and a higher quality of life in those neighborhoods. Density, business, parks, naturalization, a lot of the things, or some of the things that Ken Greenberg talked about this morning. And one of the programs that we are starting to work with is called Eco Districts, and it's very much something that's very much in line with what's happening internationally. Siemens produced this report last year, and they surveyed cities across North America, then I think in Europe as well, where to see what the sustainability attributes are. I think this is the new paradigm. The green city is the new paradigm, and the built environment plays a very important role to get cities to achieve their water, solid waste, and greenhouse gas reduction goals. So they are going to become the centers of sustainability. They are the centers of innovation, and they are the centers where business is taking place. I think that is a major marketing aspect, of becoming a major marketing aspect for many cities around the world. This Eco Districts program is something that we are currently developing with the Portland, Oregon Sustainability Institute. This is a program to put sustainability in the ground in designated neighborhoods. And sustainability, that includes the built environment, that includes infrastructure, that includes things like naturalization, like urban agriculture, a lot of things, transportation, a lot of things that we don't necessarily all do ourselves. But it's a very important approach to get sustainability on the ground, and that's always been our strength. It's always been a strength of CaGBC and its members. We make things happen. We don't just talk about it. We might talk about it, but then we make it happen. We put it on the ground. This is a real strength of ours. So with that, you can see that here. And it's also in your publication that you got with the conference. LEED Canada buildings in review. All the buildings, the 251 that we certified last year, are in review with different approaches, technology, practices, products. You can see just a variety of things, different types of buildings, from an affordable housing project to a tall office building to a small municipal buildings. You can see the innovation happening across the country. And this is because we make it happen. But it's not the journey is not over, and sustainability is like many things in life. It's a kind of a long and winding road, and you cannot necessarily see around the next corner. I think it's a beautiful road that actually I would like to drive on, or bike on, I should say bike on. But it's an interesting journey, and it's not over. I think we have to go way further. We had a really good start, but I think we need to go way further in a shorter period of time. And I think it's important we keep in mind that every building needs to be greener. And it doesn't matter what the tool is or what the approach is, but every building needs to get there. So thank you very much for your time.